Welcome back to the deep dive. Ready for another deep dive with us?
Always.
Okay, good. Because today we're tackling Freemasonry,
Ah, yes, a
and a
classic.
topic you guys have been requesting for ages. We got a ton of great articles from the Spiritual Seek on this, covering, well, pretty much everything. The history, the symbols, the rituals, even some conspiracy theories.
It's no surprise the subject captures people's imagination. It's been going strong for centuries, and there's just something about it.
Right. Like, we know the basics, secret societies, symbols everywhere, famous members. But I think what really intrigues people is the why. Why has Freemasonry endured? What's the appeal?
It's a great question, and one that takes us all the way back to, believe it or not, 1599,
Ooh, setting the scene already.
to a place called the Lodge of Edinburgh.
Okay, I'm picturing like a cozy pub with a roaring fireplace.
Well, in a way, but this lodge was actually the first documented Masonic lodge.
Hmm. So we're talking actual stonemasons back then, right?
Mhm.
The guys who built, well, everything.
Exactly. Operative Masonry, it was called. But as Europe changed, fewer massive cathedrals and castles were being built, so the demand for these skilled masons kind of...
Handled.
Yeah. And those lodges, which were basically their guilds, had to adapt. So they shifted to what's called speculative masonry.
Speculative, like thinking about stuff instead of building it.
You got it. They started welcoming men who weren't actual stonemasons, but were drawn to the ideas behind the craft, ethics, philosophy, self-improvement.
So it went from being a trade guild to more of a, I don't know, a brotherhood of thought.
Exactly. Think philosophers, scholars, gentlemen, even aristocrats mingling with commoners, all united by this shared interest. And that's where those iconic Masonic symbols, the square, compass, level, start to take on a whole new meaning.
Right, because you don't need a square if you're not actually, like, cutting stones.
Precisely. Take the square, for instance. It goes from being a tool for, getting those perfect right angles to representing morality.
Interesting. Because squaring your actions is something we still say today, right?
Yeah.
Meaning, like, doing the right thing.
Exactly. And I think that idea must have resonated even more strongly back then. The 1600s was a time of massive upheaval, so having that moral compass, that framework,
Must have been pretty appealing in a world that felt chaotic.
definitely. And then there's the compass, which for stonemasons was about setting limits, drawing boundaries. And in Masonic symbolism, you'll notice the compass is never shown fully open. It's a visual reminder about restraint, balance.
Oh, I never noticed that. It's
And
like even the tiniest details are packed with meaning.
Right. And then, of course, there's the level. In operative masonry, it's about making sure things are, well, level, but symbolically it represents equality.
Ooh, that's a big one, especially back then.
Huge. Think about it. Within the lodge, social hierarchies were basically irrelevant. A nobleman and a commoner met as equals.
So even in the 1600s, they had this idea of like a level playing field.
Exactly. And that must have been incredibly powerful for those who were usually excluded from, traditional power structures.
Okay, so we're starting to see why Freemasonry might have had such a diverse appeal. It offered a sense of community, purpose, this whole path to self-improvement.
Absolutely. And all of this sets the stage for a pivotal moment. 1717, the formation of the Grand Lodge of England.
Oh yeah, the big leagues.
It wasn't just about standardizing rituals, it was about unifying this rapidly growing organization. Suddenly, you have this global network.
So what does that tell us about its appeal, I guess, going mainstream?
Well, think about the context. The Enlightenment. This was a time when reason, intellectual curiosity...
Revolution was in the air, right?
Exactly. And Freemasonry, with its emphasis on knowledge and self-improvement, it just fit right in. It provided a space for like-minded individuals to connect, exchange ideas.
Challenge the old ways of thinking.
Exactly. And then just a few years later, in 1723, you have the publication of the Book of Constitutions, which lays out, the official story.
The rule book, the mission statement.
Yeah, it outlines those core principles: self-improvement, ethical conduct, community service, all very noble aims. But, as with anything this old and steeped in, well, mystery, there are always more layers to peel back.
Ooh, I like how you said that. Layers to peel back, because that's exactly what we're going to do after a quick break.
Sounds good to me.
All right, see you on the other side. Okay, so we've talked about the origins of Freemasonry, those symbols. But now I'm curious about, its real-world impact. Did it actually influence historical events, the way some people believe?
Ooh, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And the answer, as with most things Freemasonry, is complicated. Let's take the American Revolution, for example.
Okay, yeah. Tons of founding fathers were Masons,
A
right?
lot of key figures, yeah.
Yeah.
George Washington, Benjamin Franklin, they were very active in their lodges.
And those Masonic ideals, like liberty and equality, they definitely seem to, fit with the whole revolutionary spirit.
They do. But we got to be careful about jumping to conclusions. Just because a lot of revolutionaries were Masons doesn't automatically mean the revolution itself was some kind of, Masonic plot.
Right, right. Correlation, not causation.
Exactly. It's more likely that Freemasonry provided, like, a fertile ground for those ideas. Those lodges were meeting places where, people who were already leaning towards independence could connect and,
Hash things out.
yeah, exactly, foster that sense of community, shared purpose.
So maybe more of a catalyst, not necessarily the driving force.
That's a good way to put it. However, this whole association with revolution, with political change, it does tie into another big theme we see with Freemasonry.
Oh, I know where you're going with this.
Secrecy.
Aha. The secret handshakes, the rituals, the closed-door meetings.
Yeah, it's definitely part of the mystique, but it also seems to, breed suspicion. Hence all the conspiracy theories. Absolutely. Secrecy has always been this double-edged sword for the Freemasons. On the one hand, it creates that sense of exclusivity, of belonging to something special. It's alluring, especially in those early days. But on the other hand,
People tend to fear what they don't understand.
exactly. And when you keep things shrouded in mystery, well, people fill in the blanks with their imaginations. And sometimes that leads to some pretty wild theories, hidden agendas, control.
Right, like that whole secret cabal running the world thing.
Exactly. And it's important to remember that secrecy wasn't always a defining characteristic of Freemasonry. Early on, lodges were more transparent. They even published lists of members.
So when did things get so hush-hush?
It was gradual, influenced by, well, a bunch of things. In some cases, it was about survival. There were times and places where Freemasons faced actual persecution, so they had to go underground.
Makes sense.
And in other cases, it became more about protecting those rituals, those traditions, from outside scrutiny, maintaining a sense of sacredness, exclusivity.
But you have to wonder if all that secrecy ultimately backfired, especially now as the organization tries to, navigate the modern world.
It's a debate they're still having internally. There's a growing push for more transparency, a recognition that clinging to all that secrecy might be, well, hurting them, making it harder to attract new members, connect with a society that values openness.
Right, it's like they're trying to figure out how to stay relevant, right?
Exactly. And alongside that debate about secrecy, there are questions about, well, their place in the 21st century. Like, in a world that's becoming more and more secular, do those ancient rituals, those symbols, do they still have meaning?
How does a centuries-old tradition fit into a world that's constantly changing?
It's a tough one, and it's something a lot of traditional organizations are facing. But one way Freemasons are trying to address this is by, really emphasizing their community involvement, their charitable work.
Okay, so it's not just about, secret meetings and rituals anymore.
Right. A lot of lodges are super active in their communities, supporting charities, sponsoring scholarships, promoting civic engagement. It's about showing that they're not just about, esoteric stuff, but about making a real difference in the world.
It's like they're saying, hey, we're not stuck in the past. We're still relevant. We're still contributing.
Exactly. And that message is, I think, especially important as they face that criticism of being, this exclusive old boys club.
Yeah, that whole no girls allowed rule is definitely not a good look.
Yeah, not so much. But even that is starting to change. There are women's Masonic organizations, and in some parts of the world, you even have mixed gender lodges.
Huh. Interesting. So they are adapting.
They have to. It's a recognition that those core principles, self-improvement, community service, ethical conduct, those are valuable for everyone.
Yeah, totally. So it sounds like Freemasonry, despite all its history, is still like a work in progress, grappling with its past while trying to figure out its future.
Couldn't have said it better myself. And speaking of history, maybe this is a good time to transition to talking about, some of those prominent figures who've been associated with Freemasonry.
Oh, yeah. Let's get into some of the big names.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground, the origins of Freemasonry, the symbols, the controversies. Now, I'm really excited to hear about some of the people who've been part of this fraternity. I mean, we're talking presidents, composers, writers, The whole gamut, right?
Oh, absolutely. Freemasonry has always attracted a pretty diverse crowd, which is part of what makes it so fascinating. I mean, just look at George Washington.
Okay, yeah, the OG American Freemason.
His beliefs definitely shaped his vision for the new nation. He saw those Masonic principles, liberty, equality, fraternity, reflected in the ideals of America.
Get mind-blowing to think about, you
Yeah.
know? Like, those ideas, born in those lodges, ended up in the very foundation of a country.
It's pretty powerful stuff. And then you've got Benjamin Franklin, another major figure, Grand Master of the Pennsylvania Lodge, even incorporated Masonic symbols into the design of the Great Seal of the United States.
Wow, I never realized that. Freemasonry is, like, woven into American history.
It definitely is. And that connection has definitely fueled a lot of speculation, both good and bad. But, Freemasonry isn't just about politicians and revolutions. It's also attracted a lot of artists, intellectuals. Mozart, for example.
No way, Mozart was a Mason. I had no idea.
Oh, yeah, big time. His opera, The Magic Flute, is basically a Masonic allegory, full of symbols, themes of enlightenment, personal transformation.
Like, he encoded Masonic teachings in his music.
Exactly. And then you've got Winston Churchill, a man of action, leadership, qualities often associated with Freemasons, right? He really embodied that spirit of resilience, determination that we see in so many Masonic figures throughout history.
And to think, we also have Mark Twain in the mix, a writer known for his wit, social commentary.
And his love of a good cigar. Even he was drawn to Freemasonry. And if you look closely at his writing, you'll see those Masonic themes popping up: morality, self-improvement, the search for truth.
It's incredible to think about, this one organization attracting such a diverse range of personalities, talents. But as we've discussed, Freemasonry is also a bit, well, shadowy at times.
Definitely. The secrecy, the exclusivity, those questions of influence are still up for debate.
So I guess as we wrap up this deep dive, what's your takeaway? What's the legacy of this, well, kind of complicated organization?
It's a good question. It's hard to pin down, right?
It really is.
Yeah.
But I think at its core, Freemasonry is this reflection of the human desire for connection, meaning, purpose, all those symbols, rituals, traditions.
Mm.
Even if people don't always understand them, they speak to something deeper.
Deeper, how? Like, what do you mean?
Like a longing for belonging, for knowledge, for becoming a better version of yourself. Throughout history, Freemasons have been trying to build something better, both within themselves and in the world around them. It's a powerful idea. So after exploring all this, the history, the symbols, the controversies, the people, what's the final verdict? Is Freemasonry good, bad, just a bunch of guys hanging out?
Honestly, I don't think we can slap a single label on it. It's just too complex for that. Freemasonry, like humanity itself, is a mix of light and shadow, good intentions, and, well, human flaws. It's a story that's still being written, evolving with the times while holding on to those echoes of its ancient past.
Well said. So as we close out our Freemasonry deep dive, what's the one thing you hope our listeners walk away with?
That's a tough one. But I'd say this. Even if the specifics of Freemasonry don't totally resonate with you, those core values they emphasize: self-improvement, ethical conduct, community service, those are timeless. Those are tools we can all use to build a better world.
That's a great point. Those values are definitely worth thinking about, no matter who you are, what you believe. So huge thanks to you for guiding us through the world of Freemasonry today. And to our listeners, be sure to check out the show notes for links to those insightful articles from the Spiritual Seek that inspired this conversation. Keep seeking, keep questioning, and keep building a better world. Until next time on The Deep Dive.